I don't know about you, but in my working life, I've had some really bad managers. I have also had some really good ones, but it's often amazed me just how terrible some managers can be. In this video, I'm going to explain what I think makes a bad manager. Hey, how's it going? This is Scruffy Leadership, a YouTube channel about management and leadership. My name's Ben, and I've been a leader and a manager in the tech industry for over 25 years. I've made a bunch of videos about how to be a better manager, how to be a good manager. And so one way to characterize bad managers would just be to see which of the things I recommend they don't do. So for example, I often say that I think the most important property of a great manager is that they care. In contrast, there's a pretty strong correlation, in my opinion, between managers who don't really care about the people they manage and bad managers. Sounds obvious, but there's another way to look at it, which is that a bad manager is often someone who cares a lot about something other than the people they manage. For example, they care about their own reputation or their own success. So I'm claiming that people that care about something other than the people they manage are bad managers. And I do think that's true, but there are much worse traits than having your priorities misordered. In the remainder of this video, I'm going to run through the top 10 traits that I've seen in bad managers over the years. All right, let's start with number 10, micromanagement. This one's perfectly captured by one of my favorite Dilbert cartoons. The micromanager will often see themselves as a hands-on manager, but really they just don't trust anyone in their team enough to let them get on with things. Number 9, giving no feedback. The classic version of this is the manager that gives no positive feedback, and instead of giving constructive feedback, they just yell and get angry when something goes wrong. They think that's giving feedback. It's really not. Number 8, an inability to control their emotions. I've had a few of these. The manager who gets furious when someone does something wrong. They take everything as a personal affront or an act of betrayal. And the effect this has is to cause everyone to tiptoe around them, trying not to upset them, agreeing with them about everything. So a total lack of psychological safety, but also an environment in which no one is willing to take any risks at all. Number 7, lack of clarity. The way I've personally seen this play out is the manager who asked me to produce a deck for a presentation they were giving. It wasn't really my job to produce decks, but hey, we were a small startup, so I didn't mind too much. So I'd slave over this deck for days, but then when I'd hand it over to my boss, he'd say, "Oh, no, that's not what I wanted at all." This is the manager for whom everything's very clear in their head, but they don't know how to communicate it with the people around them. And if you're unlucky, they're also the type of leader that can't control their emotions. Number 6, not listening. It's funny how often this one goes along with the lack of clarity. This is the manager who spends their one-to-ones with you, checking their email, occasionally looking up to tell you something you've got wrong or bark an instruction at you. They're not really interested in what you have to say, so they don't listen to your ideas, your concerns, or even your status updates. And that means they don't really know what's going on in their own team. They just have the version of it that's in their heads. Number 5, divide and conquer. I had a manager who avoided group discussions with the leaders that reported to them. And this was because what they really wanted was to be able to give different versions of their updates to different people. They maintained this complex set of half-truths and outright lies, and if they got their whole team together, it'd be too easy for all this to fall apart. I think they also wanted to avoid being ganged up on and found it easier to browbeat each of us individually into agreeing with their terrible plan than if we were in a group. Number 4, picking favorites. Oh, I hate this one. When my kids were little, they used to ask me which of them was my favorite, and I'd always give the same answer. You're both my favorite. Or since I have a son and a daughter, I'd say, you're my favorite daughter and he's my favorite son. They found this really annoying, but imagine the alternative. And one of the traits that you see in bad managers is a tendency to be very clear about who they do trust and who they don't trust. They tend to let some people off the hook very easily, and for others they set impossibly high standards. It creates an obvious unfairness that just makes everyone unhappy and demotivated. Number 3, unfairly taking credit. I've honestly not seen too much of this one in my time, but it does happen, and certainly it's a very bad sign. A good manager will give all the credit for a success to their team, even if they themselves did play an important role. They shouldn't need to claim any credit for themselves because it's part of the territory of being a manager that by doing your job well, you create an environment in which your team can succeed. So a good manager errs on the side of giving more credit to others than they might deserve rather than the other way around. Number 2, not delegating. Now, once again, this is about a lack of trust. I mentioned the manager who sets impossibly high standards. Sometimes this can manifest in a refusal to delegate. If you don't believe you have anyone in your team that can do something well, you'll just do it yourself. But it also manifests in a much more benign seeming way with very junior managers who just haven't yet learned the skill of delegating, or perhaps they even feel guilty or awkward about asking someone else to do something. This is particularly common, I think, with engineers who move into management and don't really want to let go of writing code. They think, well, it'll take me an hour to explain what I want, but it'll only take me half an hour to write it myself, and I'll probably write it better than anyone else can. And that may be true, but what they're missing is that this disempowers the people in their team, shows a lack of trust, and it means that manager is not doing the things they're being paid to do, but they're instead prioritizing the things they find fun and personally rewarding. And finally, number one, a lack of empathy. Okay, I'm cheating a bit with this one. I'm going to roll a bunch of bad traits into one, but at its core, it's about not having appreciation for the people you manage, not respecting them, not trusting them, not understanding and caring about them. And this shows up in the manager who doesn't know how to react when someone in their team is upset, perhaps about something that's happening at home or something that's happening at work. It shows up as a lack of understanding when someone's underperforming, and that almost inevitably means they're not going to act in a way that helps that person improve. It shows up in the manager who calls you at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening and asks you to work over the weekend. I talked at the start of this video about caring, and this is a part of empathy. If you don't have empathy for people, you aren't very likely to really care about them and their careers. Everyone you manage is different, and they all have different needs, different things that motivate or demotivate them, and different ways that they prefer to communicate. If you as a manager don't take the time to get to know these things, then you can't be a good manager for those people. If you want to hear my 5 tips for being the best manager you can be, check out the video that's on screen now. And if you've had experiences with a bad manager, let me know about them in the comments below. Perhaps you've noticed some bad traits in managers that I haven't listed here. And if you found this video useful, please do consider clicking the like button, as that helps it to be seen by more people, which might just help to reduce the number of bad managers there are in the world. Bye. See you soon.